Hello there friends, it's Marie here again at Nicole Designs, and I'm doing a video featuring the Cloud Whip from scrapbook.com. Now this is a really fun medium to work with. It is like a paste, so you're going to take your jar, open it up. It has this seal on under the lid that keeps everything sealed and fresh, and you're just going to go ahead and pull that off. Now if you want to, when you try to seal this back up, you can put a little press and seal over the top or a little bit of plastic wrap there to kind of keep it more fresh, but so far I haven't had a problem with mine drying out. You can go ahead and scoop some out of your jar using a palette knife or something similar, and you can see first of all when I'm scooping it out it's a little bit thick, but as you work with it on your surface it's actually going to sort of soften up a bit and be a lot easier to spread and work with. So I just like to put some down onto my glass mat or whatever surface I'm working on and just kind of work with it a little bit to get it going. So of course I'm going to put this over some stencils, and so I'm just going to pick it up, start spreading it on to show you how this works. And as you can see, I don't always wash my stencils, so as I'm putting this on, some of that ink that's left on my stencil from a previous project is mixing in with the Cloud Whip. So I'm busted. I don't wash my stencils all the time. I don't know if you guys do or not, but I got lazy with this one and it gave me a nice little surprise. Some pink clouds as it mixed with the ink. Now this actually isn't a problem because I'm going to be showing a lot of different techniques that you can use this Cloud Whip for in this video, and mixing it with ink is just one of the ways that you can use this Cloud Whip, and it's actually really fun. So it ended up giving me some very light pink clouds, which I don't hate. I think they're really cute. So I'm going to pull off that stencil and I'm going to pick up my paper and just show you the texture that this gives, and it's really fun to play with. So I like to clean up the sides of my cardstock by just wiping my fingers along it, clean up anything that's hanging off the edge, and let that dry, and you're going to have a really fun stenciled textured background. Now this Cloud Whip is also really easy to clean up. I typically keep baby wipes at my desk anyway, so I'm just using one to go ahead and wipe up everything on my surface. And if you find you need a little bit more cleaning than a baby wipe, you can just take everything to your sink and wash it with some warm soapy water. So next, I'm going to show you some more stenciling techniques and some more things that you can do with this Cloud Whip. So I'm actually taping this stencil on, and when I tape stencils onto my cardstock, I like to actually tape it from behind. That way I can stencil the whole front of my card front and not have that tape in the way because it's coming on from behind, and it's just a really handy way to tape your stencils down. So again, I'm scooping up some of this Cloud Whip and I'm going to put it on my work area, just work with it a little bit. You don't have to be afraid to use just a little bit at a time. You can always add more if you want to. So scoop out a little bit. If you find you need more, go ahead and grab some more. And like I mentioned earlier, one technique that you can do with this Cloud Whip is mix it with some ink. So I am just squishing some of this Catherine Pooler ink down onto my work surface, and I'm just going to go ahead and mix it. So I'm using my palette knife here, just scraping it over that ink and just mixing it until I see that the color is evenly distributed and I don't have any white streaks left. Now you will want to keep in mind that you are mixing color with a white medium, and so this is going to give you a very much lighter color. It's going to be light, it's going to be kind of pastel. You can go ahead and add more color to it, but it might not be as dark and vibrant as your ink pad is. So just keep that in mind. But I find that it really does give you a very lovely color. If you like those light colors and those pastel colors, it does a really good job of giving you some really fun, calming light colors. So I'm making a purple here. I'm just mixing it with my ink, and then I'm going to go ahead and stencil this on. So I'm picking it up with my palette knife, just scraping it off my surface there and just gently scraping it over my stencil. Now when you're stenciling, you're going to want to be careful not to be too aggressive. You don't want that stencil to come up as you're stenciling and have anything squish underneath. So just be really gentle as you spread it over the top and you should have no problems. Now I actually want to get a few different colors on here, so I'm going to take a blue and mix it in with my Cloud Whip now. And you can actually go ahead and take this Cloud Whip and mix a few colors together and get it to blend into each other. And if you want to go ahead and blend some colors together, just pay attention to the colors that you're using. Use some colors that will blend nicely together. Unless you want to make mud, then go ahead and blend some colors to get that mud. But use some colors in sort of the same color families, and you should be fine when you add them together. So I'm just mixing up this Cloud Whip the same way I did with the purple, making sure I don't have any of those white streaks in there, and the color is evenly distributed. Now I'm coming in from the top of my card front, and I'm just pulling that Cloud Whip down a little bit, overlapping that purple, and I'm going to get a really nice blend between the two colors that you'll see here in a second when I pull off my stencil. Now, like I mentioned, go ahead and wash off your stencils in the sink. Use some warm soapy water or a baby wipe. It is easier to wash them right away before everything's dried on them. If you let it dry, you might have to scrub a little bit harder. So go wash off your stencils, even though y'all know that I don't from our first little video clip of this video. But there you have it. Some ink blended Cloud Whip, if that's what you want to call it. I used the rest of that blue. I didn't want to waste it, so I did another background here just to quickly show you that while this Cloud Whip, is still wet, you can grab some glitter and sprinkle that over the top. Now, I don't know why I'm not using a piece of paper or a coffee filter underneath my card background for some reason, but do go ahead and do that so you can pick up all the extra and put it back in your bottle. For some reason today and in the rest of this video, I'm just not picking up any extra. I don't know why. I typically like to pick up the extra and use it again. But it's kind of hard to see in the video here, but that fine glitter can stick to all of that wet Cloud Whip and really give you a glittery, shimmery background if you want to sprinkle some over your stencils. So again, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my area, and I'm moving on to another set of stencils. So obviously you can use this Cloud Whip with stencils, but I want to give you guys a lot of different ideas on how to do that. So I'm actually using some of Simon Hurley's Lunar paste here. This stencil from scrapbook.com is a really fun one. It's a layering stencil, so you do the first layer and then you put another stencil over what you stenciled, and you can do a second layer. So this first layer here, I'm using some of this Lunar paste with a foam blending tool, and I'm just adding on some golden stars to my background. Now, I could go ahead and add this Lunar paste with my palette knife and get some really fun, textury, chunky stars, but I wanted this layer to be flat since I'm layering texture over for the second layer. So that's why I went ahead and I did it with the ink blending tool. You can see here I'm going to put on my second layer, and this gives a really fun firework kind of background. And I'm going to stencil on these fireworks, but first, of course, I want to get some gold and shimmer in with that Cloud Whip. So I'm going to mix some Lunar paste with it, and you can do this just the same way as you would with some ink. It's going to give you a gold shimmery finish, but it is going to be a little bit muted down. So just like I mixed this with the ink, I'm going to mix that Lunar paste in, just squishing it around, and then once all of that white is mixed in, I don't have any streaks, I'm going to spread it over my stencil. Now the Lunar paste did take a little bit more mixing than the ink, but it wasn't that bad. And you can see I'm getting a really muted light gold-ish color from mixing it in with that white Cloud Whip. And I'm just spreading it over the stencil just like I do all of the other stencil backgrounds. And it actually looks really fun once this one is done. And again, after you go ahead and stencil, go wash it off with warm soapy water and you should be fine. Now, after I did the stenciling on this one, I did also go add some glitter as well. I was thinking with all of these fireworks and stars, you needed a little bit of glitter. So once I had all of the extra off of my stencil there, and I pulled back that stencil, you can see how fun this background is. And again, I'm going to add some of that fine glitter like I did to our previous background. Now, if you're interested in any of the products I'm using and this cloud web, make sure you check out that description box below. I've got links to all of the things and links to scrapbook.com, so you can go check out my gallery there and see more pictures of the cards that I make of these backgrounds, and you can check out all the products. And if you haven't already, consider giving a thumbs up to this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Let me know which of these techniques you're loving, which one you want to try in your own craft room, and which finished card you love the best. I'm going to put some videos or some photos at the end of this video showing how I turned these backgrounds into cards, so stay tuned for that. All right, I'm moving on to another technique here. So for most of these backgrounds, I have mixed color into this cloud whip. For this one, I'm just putting it straight onto that stencil, so I've got a white on white background going on, but I am going to color it using some embossing powder. Now, I went ahead and I experimented, and you can use embossing powder over this paste, sprinkle some on, heat it up, and it is going to work. So as much as I love this white on white background, it can give you a little bit of added jur, could give you the impression of a embossed background. You can also go ahead and put some embossing powder over it. So here I'm sprinkling on some navy blue embossing powder. This is from Tonic Studios. And again, I don't know why I'm not using a coffee filter underneath to catch all the extra. I guess I'm just having a day where I'm not thinking about it. But you can definitely go ahead and catch that extra and put it back in the bottle. Now I'm also adding some of this sort of coral pink color along with that navy blue. And I believe that these embossing powders are from one of the newer trends from Tonic Studios. And they had a lot of the coral and the blue colors in that trend. So I'm mixing them together on my background here, just to show you that you can mix different colors of embossing powder, or you could use just one color if you want. It's totally up to you. But I'm just mixing some to get a few different colors in here. Filling in some of those areas that I didn't get a whole lot of that navy color, and I'm just tapping off the extra. Now, before you emboss, you might want to clean up your surface so you don't emboss any of that powder onto your glass mat. So I went ahead and I cleaned it up, and I'm hitting it with my heat tool here. You can't see it very well, but that cloud whip does puff up a little bit as you heat it and as that embossing powder melts. It is going to take a little bit longer for that powder to melt over the cloud whip than it would if you used embossing ink. So keep that in mind. You might want to just think about that if you don't want your paper to warp very much. I did get a little bit of warping on this background because I'm doing a lot of embossing, and I'm holding my heat tool there for a little while before that embossing powder melts. But if you add enough adhesive on the back like I did for my finished card, you can't really tell much of the warping at all. And there it is, all dried and embossed. You can see I'm tipping it in the light. You can see it's a little bit shiny. All of that embossing powder is embossed, and it really gives it a very nice raised textured background with that shiny embossing powder on top. All right, moving on to another background. This one I actually ended up loving. I'm taking some pops of color and I'm mixing it with my cloud whip, making different colors that I am going to brush on. So I selected my colors. I'm just squirting some into the cloud whip, and I'm going to mix it up just like I mixed the lunar paste and the ink and all the other things into this cloud whip. I've made 4 little piles of the cloud whip, and I'm just going to mix them all up, and then I'm going to put them to my background. Now, since the cloud whip does really lighten those colors and you end up with pastels, the 2 different blues didn't end up having a whole lot of difference between them. They both kind of looked like the same shade of blue. So if you wanted to get different shades of blue, maybe pick some blues that have a lot more difference between them than the ones I did, but it still worked. I ended up with 3 really pretty colors. Now here they are all mixed up, and I'm going to apply them to my background using a stencil brush. So this is a really big stencil brush from Tonic Studios, and I'm just going to pick up some of that color and brush it on. Now along with your stencils that you want to go ahead and wash right away, do go ahead and wash your stencil brush in warm soapy water and let it dry, because it's a lot easier to wash when it's wet than when you let that color dry on the brushes. So I'm just randomly picking up some of this Cloud Whip and brushing it on here and there. The nice thing about this Cloud Whip is that as you work with it, it gets a lot more movable, it gets a lot thinner, and it's easy to brush with, so you can pick up with a brush and make some really fun backgrounds. I'm going kind of abstract here. I'm just making little blobs of color in different direction, and you can keep in mind that you're going to see the brush strokes, so the direction you're brushing will kind of be seen. So I'm going up and down, I'm going back and forth, and just kind of making a background that I think looks fun and that you can put some different sentiments and things on top of. So I really did love how this one turned out. It dries with those brush marks still in there. It dries a little bit raised, so it gives some texture, and it looks like a fun pastel painting. Now don't worry, I didn't waste all of that extra Cloud Whip on my glass mat. I let my kids take some backgrounds and brush on a lot of these colors with the extras there, and they had a lot of fun doing that. So that is my last technique with this Cloud Whip. I'm going to add some pictures at the end here, just showing the different ways I turned these into cards. And also, like I mentioned before, if you want to see more pictures of the finished cards and all of the products up close, visit my gallery at scrapbook.com. Also, look at all the links below if you're interested in anything that I've used today. And please leave a comment. Tell me what you love, what you would do, if there's anything that you would add. I love hearing from you guys. So have a great day, everyone. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!